The content of this presentation is proprietary and confidential information of the Florida Firefighters Safety and Health Collaborative. It is not intended to be distributed by any party without the written consent of the Florida Firefighter Safety Health Collaborative. Attendees should note that the educational component of this session is being recorded and will be published on the Florida Firefighter Safety Health Collaborative website. To maintain complete confidentiality, an announcement will be made after the recording begins, and only the presenter will be identified during the recording. Therefore, to ensure anonymity, all attendees are asked to mute their microphones until an announcement is made that the recording is complete. Presentations are intended for educational purposes only and do not replace independent professional judgment. The ideas expressed in this presentation are the professional opinion of the presenter and do not necessarily represent those of the Florida Firefighter Safety Health Collaborative or its constituents. Before acting on any of the information presented, attendees should consider the appropriateness of the information as it pertains to their individual situation and seek independent professional advice should any concerns arise. If you or anyone you know are in what is believed or perceived to be a situation that is or may become harmful, please reach out to the National Domestic Violence Hotline via phone at 1-800-799-SAFE 7233 or through their website, thehotline.org, or dial 911 in the event of an emergency. With that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Lane. Dr. Lane is not only a mental health professional, but he's also helps teach them at Mercer University. He's got many, many accolades that I couldn't do justice for. So I'm going to allow him to introduce himself and start his presentation.
Thank you, and thanks for having me tonight, everybody who's involved and who's attending, and Mark, especially Michelle, who invited me to come. Mark, is it okay if they ask questions as we go and have discussions as they go, or is it supposed to be confidential? I heard that statement in there.
If that's what you want to do and they're comfortable with sharing or asking questions, that's purely up to them.
Okay, good. So that's what I would like to do. I like to generate a discussion. Sometimes if you try to hold questions till the last 10 or 15 minute period, question and answer period, sometimes you forget them or they slip away or you miss the moment where the question might have been pertinent, might have been very additive to the discussion. And so I would to be able to do that, have a discussion as much as possible. Looks like there's about 20 folks in here, so that should be manageable on Zoom. It makes it a little more stilted, but I hope everybody is okay with that. Like Mark said, my name is David Lane. I'm professor of counseling at Mercer University in Atlanta, Georgia. And he said that I've got the Viking blood coursing through me. And all that means, that's a nice way to say it, is I'll fight anybody at the drop of a hat. That's just a nice way. That's a nice, polite way of saying that. And we're talking about communication tonight. And so I had to learn some things once I got married to temper that hot blood that does course through my veins. My daughter's very much like me. And we were joking literally just night before last. She lives in Colorado, and we were talking on the phone. And I said that if I were born 1,000 years ago, I would have been a berserker. And she said, yeah, I would have been the female version of whatever that is. So that's what Mark is talking about. I I've been a counselor for over 40 years. Just finished, had my anniversary, 44 years. I'm one of those blessed individuals who just out of college found what he was supposed to be doing with his life, and at 22 accidentally found a job as a counselor, and I have never looked back. And so it's been real rewarding. I'm really happy to be here tonight. I've done a lot of things what professors are supposed to do. I've done a lot of writing and got some books and treatment programs and treatment protocols, et cetera, for trauma. I've been involved, like Mark said, with an organization that's where he and I met, an organization called Warrior to Citizen. I see Mike Roberts is in here. He's the chief executive officer of that organization. And it's been a pleasure to be involved with them. And we've segued over to working with first responders because you have many of the same issues this group of first responders does. And so I'm very, very happy and pleased to be able to work with that group and first responders and Warrior to Citizen as well. It's been a real pleasure. Um, so I won't bore you with a whole lot of that. I think my real bona fides is I grew up in Alabama, and I'm a lifelong Auburn fan. Anybody on here that hopefully that offends some people, the Florida folks and the Alabama folks in particular. But anyway, that's my real bona fides, I think, right there. So, like I said, if you got questions as we go, please just unmute yourself and chime in, because I'd love to have a discussion with you rather than sit here and talk at you. I'm going to do a little PowerPoint. It's just a handful of slides. I promise this is not death by PowerPoint like so many meetings and seminars are. I want us to have a talk. But tonight I'm going to talk about communication, and I'm going to talk about I hopefully effective ways of communicating, particularly when you're under stress. We've all been under a tremendous amount of stress the last few months, 11, going on almost 12 months now, 11 months ish, and it's difficult at times to manage what we have to manage, and then this added stress has layered on top of it and making it very, very difficult. And but I'm going to start with just a straight up something honest. With communication, I don't have a lot of good news for you. Communication is difficult to begin with. This isolation and forced closeness, everybody is at home vast majority of the time, has just made that a little bit worse. And the really, really hard thing about communication is a big chunk of it is my responsibility. When I'm having a communication problem, the first thing that I want you to hear, and the first thing that makes it so hard, is I need to go look in the mirror, because chances are I'm looking at a big chunk of the problem. I had a friend who was recovering alcoholic, and I say had because he died a few years ago. But he said that he had he had practiced recovery for a long time before he finally got in recovery, and he had said he had gotten clean and sober about a half a dozen times before he finally got on the wagon and stayed on the wagon. And he said the way that he finally got clean and sober was he took a yellow sticky, put them on every mirror in the house, and wrote on the yellow sticky, "You're looking at the problem." And he said that was how he finally got sober. Is every time he'd be shaving in the morning and he would see, "You're looking at the problem." He would comb his hair, "You're looking at the problem." And it was just a constant reminder he had to deal with himself. And that's kind of where I want to start tonight. Generally, problems in communication begin with me. There's a breakdown in some kind of communication, most frequently an expectation. If you think about the last fuss you had with your significant other, it was probably because he or she did not meet an expectation or foiled one of your expectations, or you didn't meet one of theirs, or you foiled one of their expectations because they were expecting you to be home at 6 o'clock. Well, your car breaks down, leaves you on the side of the road, Michelle. How do you get home standing on the side of the road 2 hours? Well, you walk in the door, and potentially somebody's upset with you because you didn't meet that expectation. You weren't home when you said you were going to. Now, blessedly, we live in an era where we got cell phones now, and we can call and say that the car died, I'm stuck on the side of the road waiting on a tow, and that helps some. But you got to be upfront with your communication in order to do that. But that's an example of sometimes our expectations are foiled, and that leads to bad, difficult times. So the first thing that I have to do to communicate effectively and problem solve with another human being is a self evaluation. I have to look at myself and say, what was I expecting? What was I believing that was going to happen? And what do I want to do to make up for that, or fix that however I can, make amends, or ask them to make amends, or whatever the solution might be to the problem. So it begins with that, and that makes it extraordinarily hard because nobody wants to look at themselves. If we look at ourselves, we see that, well, we need to do so and so. We need to um, speak our minds more clearly, or we need to take care of the responsibilities. We need to quit procrastinating. Any number of things when we look at ourselves. And that makes it really, really hard because nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to just let it ride, or let somebody else take care of it, or hope that somebody else does it, or just not fool with it at all. We put negative stuff away for a reason, and that's because it's unpleasant. So The first step in effective problem solving, effective communication is to look at myself. When I start having a problem, I look at myself. And it's been my experience that is often the cause of the problems. When I first started as a counselor, I was working with teenagers and children. And I don't know if y'all have ever noticed with teenagers and children, but they will frustrate the crap out of you. Have any of you ever noticed that? Them creatures are hard to work with. And so I was frustrated. I spent a lot of time frustrated, particularly the first 2 years. I worked with children and adolescents about 14 years of my career. But the first 2 years, I spent a lot of time frustrated. And I got tired of being frustrated. And finally, I sat down with myself and I said, okay, self, why are you so frustrated all the time? And I looked around and I dug around, and what I was dealing with was my own expectations. I was expecting those kids to, well, like my daddy said, growing up in Alabama, he said, you need to act like somebody. And so I was expecting those kids to act like somebody. I was expecting them to be able to behave. I was expecting them to listen. I was expecting them to sit still when they're supposed to sit still and do what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing. And that's ridiculous, because here I am at this now advanced age. I can't even do that. I can't sit still. I don't follow directions extremely well. I'll refer you to my wife. She's in another room if you want specifics about that. But it's hard for me. So my expectations were unreasonable. They couldn't, they just couldn't do it. And so I put down my expectations and I went and came alongside the child, and then I could be helpful. I met them where they were and I came alongside, and now we can get some work done instead of having this adversarial relationship where I have set of expectations, and no self-respecting teenager is going to do what they're told. No self-respecting teenager is going to follow the rules. And so here I am over here expecting them to follow the rules, and they're saying, no. But if I come alongside them and meet them where they are, then I can better work with them. The same thing happens in my relationships. If I have something that I need to communicate that really clearly. If my wife has something that she needs, I ask her. I can't make her do anything, as you all well know, but I want her, and I ask her to please tell me what she needs and to tell me what she wants and tell me what she expects. And I'll do my best, because I love her. I'll do my best to try and meet those expectations and those needs and those wants. But that starts with the self-regulation, with the self-evaluation, and taking a look at what I'm expecting, and so that I can first communicate it, and then um, uh, decide to meet somebody else's expectations. And so it starts with that self-evaluation, followed by self-regulation. When I start to look at what it is that I expect and look at what I'm struggling with, it plays a role in all three areas of thinking, feeling, and behaving, because my thinking will be about my expectations. My feelings will be driven by that thinking, and then I'll behave out of the feelings. Like I'll get I'll get upset about something. I'll get angry about something. And so that thinking about it drives my feelings. But if I'm really taking a look at myself, then I can head problems off at the pass, and I can look through what I'm expecting and then better regulate how I'm feeling and therefore how I'm acting. Is that making any sense to anybody? So some of the cameras on, I see some nods out there. So that makes sense, but it's really, really hard. It sounds so simple when this guy says it, but Lord, devil's in the details. And that's the truth about most things. Executing is extremely hard, but the truth is a habit like any other habit. And if I can learn to do the habit of the self regulation, i.e., look in the mirror, go look in the mirror. If I'm upset about something, I check me first. They talk in medical school, and I do this. I'll chase bunnies every now and then, so please bear with me. They talk in medical school. They got a little phrase that they teach first years, that in case of emergency, check your own pulse first. Now, ain't that weird? Why would you check your own pulse? Because if I'm panicking and if I'm running around like Daffy Duck or a chicken with his head cut off, I'm not gonna be able to do anybody any good. So I've got to check me first, then step into the situation. I've got to make sure that I can function. And I don't know if y'all have practiced it, but I heard a long time ago that fast is slow. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Have y'all ever heard that? So when I'm in a crisis, when I'm in an emergency, I don't try to move fast. I on purpose, I slow down so that I can do the step-by-step progression of what I need to do. A lot of you probably render first aid all the time, maybe some EMTs. I know all the firefighters are trained in at least first aid if you're not an EMT or paramedic. And that's just a good practice. Slow down, self-regulate is what that means. Slow yourself down so that you can think clearly and do the step-by-step things that you need to do in this situation. So it's a habit like that. If I come home from work and I've been irritated, all of us have tough days. Sometimes I've been a little irritated. I was on a long shift and I come home and I'm already a little irritated and I walk in the door and no telling what's going on. It's real easy for me to fly off the handle. It's real easy for me to get upset. And like I said earlier, with my Viking blood, it's just a matter of who and not a matter of whether I'm going to fight. It's just a matter of who I'm going to fight. And so I walk in the door, I'm already a little bit on edge. I need to take a look at me. I need to see what's going on with me. What am I upset about? What am I struggling with? Am I bringing it home with me? You know, 100 possibilities could go with that. So I first check me and then I try to deal with whatever it is that I see in front of me. So once I can handle me, I've developed that neat new habit of getting a handle on what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling, which then leads to how I'll behave. I approach problems with the idea that I first need to listen. Most of us, when we approach problems or when we're upset about something, we go in and and we start talking on purpose. Can I take a step back? Can I take a step back and see what's here first and what I need to listen to first? How many of you read Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People? Any? Yeah, see some hands with those that got the cameras on. His first one is seek to hear, not to be heard. And that's what I'm talking about. Seek first to hear, not to be heard. So I want to listen to what's going on first, and then try and figure out kind of where a middle ground is. So that's what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes. That was all kind of introduction and overview to get to the model that I am going to share with you. And I'm going to go to share screen and talk a little bit about a thing that's called the Get, Give, Merge, and Go model. And it was developed by Robert Karkoff in the middle 1980s. So I'm going to go to share screen, and it's only 6 slides that I'm going to talk us through as we go. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to speak up. If you got any right now, it'd be a good time to jump in. Just unmute yourself and start talking as I share the screen and see if we can get the technology to work. Because technology is wonderful when it works. Let's see if it will. Oh, can you see the screen? That's a miracle. With me and at my age, that's loaves and fishes kind of stuff right there to get the technology to work on the first try. So let's talk about the Get, Give, Merge, and Go model. This is developed by Robert Karkoff in the middle. I think it was in the 1980s, might have been the 70s. It's been around a while, but he's an interpersonal communications guy out of University of Chicago, and he's developed it's called the IPR model, interpersonal relationships model. He's the most frequently cited author in counseling literature. So he's been around a long time. He's trained by Carl Rogers. Some of you may know who Carl Rogers is, but he's been around a long time. And he developed this model for problem solving, largely for business and correctional officers in particular. He worked with the federal corrections system for a long time. And this was the problem solving model that he taught them. And he's taught it to businesses and school teachers and all over the country and world since the last 30 or 40 years. It's called the Get, Give, Merge, Go model. And in the Get, Give, Merge, and Go model, the first thing you do is get. But that starts with me checking myself, because what I want to do first is give. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. I'm going to tell you what I'm mean. I want to tell you the 912 things that you've done that really got under my skin, in the last day or hour or whatever it is at this time that's been going. And I want to give. Well, that's just, as we say in Alabama, that's bass backwards. And I heard Michelle say something a while ago, which just gave me permission to use a word like that. But that's just bass backwards. The first thing that you have to do once you learn to check yourself is get. You go in and you got a disagreement with somebody, you got a problem with something. This works with your children, this works with your teenagers, this works with your spouse and friends. It'll work at work. I promise it will. And the first thing you do is listen carefully. Now, you may have to say to them, tell me what's going on, or something like that. And directly ask them, what are they thinking? Well, and you don't do so, well, what were you thinking? That's not the way you do it. You say, well, tell me about your thinking. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how you were feeling about that, the problem that's come up. And you get their side of the story. You get all the information from them. You idea is to get an understanding of what it is that they've got going on, and what it is that they need, and what it is that they want. Then the second thing, then you give once you've clearly understood what they said. And you do that by saying things like, let me make sure I understand. You're saying so and so, or you got upset because this, you felt that. And you kind of reflect back to them, here's what I heard you saying. And once you're clear, once they've stated what they need to state, then you move to the give. Okay, I hear what you're saying. I understand. I think I understand how you're feeling and what's going on with you. Let me kind of tell you what I was thinking and what I was feeling. And you state what you were thinking and feeling. Be really concrete. You don't say things like, well, you never do this, or you always do that, because that's just not true. A never and an always is never true. So you be really concrete, and you say things like, well, I was expecting you to be home at 6. I thought you said you were going to be home at 6 o'clock. Or, it really bothered me when you came in the door and you seemed kind of ill, and it felt like you brought home something from work. And you give your side of the story, you give the information. Be really clear, be very specific, be concrete, be objective. Use what in my field is called an I statement. Well, I was hurt by what you said. I was hurt because you accused me, and I felt falsely accused. I was upset because it seemed like you came in the door upset. And you use those I statements. You don't blame and finger wag. Well, you came in here all angry and you brought that mess in this house, and blah blah. That's all accusatory. That just inflames the situation. I was hurt. I was upset. I was bothered, and you're taking responsibility for how you felt and what you were thinking. And so you give them an opportunity to talk it through. And if the other side, if the person you're talking with starts to wander or get accusatory, you can simply say to them, it feels like what I'm saying is upsetting you. I don't mean to upset you. That's not my intent. My intent is to give you the information and help you understand uh, what I sense is going on here. So you try to be objective, and you try to be clear, and you try to be specific. And that's really hard, because you're now emotionally aroused and they're emotionally aroused. And this is all really, really hard. That's why I said at the first, I don't have a whole lot of good news for you, because looking in the mirror is really hard work. And then staying on top of and managing your own set of feelings is really, really hard work. And not just doing what you normally do. And I'll just speak personally. I'm not accusing any of you, which is fly off the handle. The family I grew up in, it was like, who yells the loudest is the one that won. That's how we negotiated. That was called negotiation in my house, is you just yell louder. Well, my wife is of German origin. She's very stoic. And so I come in with this Viking persona, and she comes in with this German persona. And we're standing on opposite sides of the continent at times at first. And we had to figure out how to come to the middle, how to come to the middle ground, because my yelling the loudest was not going to work, and her not saying anything was not going to work. We had to figure out how to meet in the middle, and we literally have practiced this model now for a little over 42 years. What didn't start out like that, like every married couple, after we first got married, she, um, about 6 months in, honeymoon's over, my socks are in the middle of the living room floor, that kind of stuff. And she said to me one day, I feel like you don't ever listen to me. And so, I took that to heart. I really heard that, and there was enough truth in it to make me really stay with it. Well, I started the counseling program, my master's program, just shortly after that. We got married in June, and I started the counseling program the following spring. And so I was taking this course in communication skills as part of the counseling program. And so they taught us reflective statements, how to demonstrate that you're listening. You make a reflective statement. You just summarize what somebody has said. And so the next time something came up after I was taking that course, I said, she said, Here's what the thing. And I said, well, what I hear you saying is, and made a reflective statement. And she said, don't do that counseling shit to me. And so that ended my career of trying to make reflective statements with her. And so, um, but I figured out another way to do it, at least a chunk of the time, where I didn't come across counselory. I wasn't doing that. And she's a counselor too, and that's how she identified it for what it was. And I figured out, and I learned how to be a more clear and less whatever what you want to describe. And she learned how to be more open and direct. And we literally practiced this model for around 42 years. So once you have, once they have, once you have given your piece, you listen carefully, you seek first to listen, so you get all the information. Then you give, and make sure that everything you want to say has been said, and that you're clear and concrete and succinct and specific, and you stay on target. We're real bad in relationships when we feel like we're failing a little bit or losing a little bit to go off over here. Well, what about your mama? You bring in something else from 22 years ago, or from something with the in-laws or something. No, with this, you stay clear, and you stay succinct, and you stay objective, and you stay on topic. And so, um, you once you've given everything and you're pretty sure that you understand them and they understand you, then you move to the merge portion. And at the merge, both of you take a look at exactly each other's points of view, and you actively try to clarify and make sure that everybody's clear on what's going on, and use paraphrasing and reflection that next sentence. But generally in the middle is there's some kind of common ground. I remember a situation, again, all I got my examples. I'm not going to share anybody else's examples or ask you to share anything like that. And so I just use mine. I'm not trying to talk about myself. I'm trying to get you some concrete examples. My wife she's in private practice. I teach full time and in private practice part time. She private practice full time, teaches part time. And so, she would be at her office till like 9 o'clock at night. And it worried me a little bit because, this starting in November when the clocks change, it's dark at 5 o'clock. And so she's up there by herself in that office till 9 o'clock. Well, it's been a night or two when she didn't, she's supposed to be home at 9. Well, she comes in at 9:45, 10 o'clock. And I'm really been out of shape by this time. And she's always said, "Well, I had a client in crisis. I don't know what the problem is, but well." And so the way that we solved that problem ultimately was I looked in the mirror, and I realized that I was just worried to death. And it's reasonable for me to be worried to death about my wife, right? She's an hour late coming home, has been in an office building by herself, probably not really, but pretty isolated and alone, an hour later than she's supposed to. What am I supposed to think? And so the way we solved that problem was I looked in the mirror, And I realized that I was taking my scared to death out on her. And then she said, "Well, I don't know what you're worried about. I hope you know that if I'm late like that, I'm dealing with some crisis that came up." And I said, "Well, I would like to believe that. I think that's, the ideal situation is that versus you being dead in a ditch somewhere." And she said, "Well, then what I can do is this." And this is um, early days of cell phones. She had one of those bag phones at that time, and it cost 83 cents a minute or whatever those things were. Y'all don't, some of y'all are probably too young to even remember those things. But she said, if I'm running late like that, I will call you. But it was not in the days of, the handy dandy little, everybody's got one in their hand all the time. This was a bag phone. She would have had to make it some effort. And it would have cost $2 to make a minute and a half phone call home to tell me she was just running late. And I said, okay, that sounds great to me. And for my contribution, I'll trust that you are going to call me and I won't worry myself sick. And so we found a way to merge because we had common ground. The common ground was that we loved each other. It's just that simple. And when we hit on that place, then we're able to come alongside like I did with the teenagers rather than stand over here and be adversarial and butt heads with each other. So when we listen carefully to each other and I listen to her. She listens to me. We figure out some middle ground. Then we come alongside instead of doing all the button heads. Now, this is awfully hard. I understand. It's written here on a piece of paper and it looks so cute and simple and it's a nice background and everything that the font's easily read. But then to try to put that into practice is a whole nother ball game. And I understand we had to change habits. And we did that by carefully looking at ourselves, which is very, very hard work to do. But once you merge, then you go. Because lots of times you'll sit with them and you experience this at work all the time. You have a meeting and you talk about what are we going to do? You listen, they listen. You say it, okay, here we'll figure out what we're going to do. Then nobody ever goes and does it, right? That's the most frequently dead on the vine piece of the model is that people they don't go. They don't put the solution into action. They don't do what they said they were going to do. The subcommittee doesn't actually ever do anything, or the individual who said he would doesn't do it. And so it's incumbent on you in this situation to, once you both figure out a plan, to then be loyal to whatever it is that you agreed to do. And particularly with the people that you work with, most of the folks you work with, you like. I know there's a little bit like families, and you have your share of fusses and you have your share of spats, and sometimes people are a little bit on the outs, or you don't particularly like that one aunt or uncle kind of feeling. um, but you guys depend on each other. The jobs that you're in, it's life and death. This is the guy in the foxhole right beside you, and you must depend on them and trust them literally with your life in some situations. And so it's important that you like each other to some extent so that you can trust each other, and not have any ill will or bad blood between you. And then the same thing at home. You love your partner. You wouldn't be with them if you didn't. So you love them. So start with that. And that makes looking in the mirror and looking at yourself and doing that kind of work a whole lot easier. Start with, I really love her. I don't want to, in my case, I really love her. I don't want to drive her crazy. I don't want to run her off. I don't want to hurt her any more than just living with another human being and rubbing up against each other, causing the friction is going to cause anyway. And so I will commit to do that work. And once I've done that, I start with that basis. Once I've done that, and we merge ideas, we figure out what we're going to do. Then I take responsibility. I make sure that Mark, that's a distractor, buddy. That's just too cute. Um, so we make sure we implement that plan and we go with whatever it is that we have agreed upon to do. And if somebody's not doing it, you say to them, not in a snotty way, you're not. Blah, 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 blah. No, you say, I thought we'd agreed to do X, Y, Z when those arise. And 80% of the time, the other person will say, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking. I was on autopilot, and then um, I'll get back to that. You're right. I'm 100%. So, but I'm going to take down the screen share now. But that, but it all starts with me looking at myself, which is not good news. I know that's hard. and nobody wants to really do it, but that's where it all starts. But it turns out that it's pretty mercenary. If I can do that, then my life gets better, right? Because I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to be ill all the time. I don't want bad stuff in my relationship. I don't want bad stuff with my kids. So it serves me to do this clear communication, listen carefully to what they're saying, make sure that I'm communicating clearly, make sure that I'm regulating my own feelings and responsible for my own expectations, figure out how to meet a middle ground, and then both go and do what we said we were going to go and do. And so a lot harder than reading it on a piece of paper, but in fact is fairly simple if you devote yourself to practicing it and making it the new habit. It only takes about 21 days to create a new habit if you're diligent about practicing that habit. And so that's my offering for you tonight. It's the Get, Give, Merge, and Go model. So I don't even know what time it is. What time? Oh, 8:45. I'm good. Mark said 45 minutes or so, and then we'll talk for a while.
That was
So,
great. Thank you so much
you're welcome.
for that presentation. I'm sure that I wasn't the only one that it resonated with. So thank you.
Good.
I do have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
We talked a lot about verbal communication.
Mhm.
There's a lot of nonverbal communication, right? That happens when we
Oh,
get
yeah.
home from shift.
Yep.
I heard one time I heard someone say, "Hey, when I get home from shift, if I had a bad shift, I let my wife know because I bring her home flowers and I'll put them in a vase, and she knows
Oh,
that
that's
I
good.
need my space."
That's
So,
good.
yeah, right. So, I don't know, maybe if you can talk a little to those nonverbals, right? Like, okay, after a while when you're married, right, you can identify these nonverbals and like suggestions on how to manage it. Because
Mhm.
there's a honey-do list when we get home,
Mhm.
but when honey don't want to do, what do we do? Right?
Right.
So I thought, and it doesn't take the verbal of leave me alone. Sometimes it's very painfully obvious that
Right.
something's going on. So I thought maybe we could talk about or you, sir, could talk a little bit about the nonverbals.
Well, your example is a wonderful example. If you can have some kind of cue that I'm going to need a minute to each other, when you get home. But that what you described was he was taking responsibility for how he was feeling and what he was thinking and communicating that clearly, and they just had a little signal, and that's a really good way to do that, and it could be personalized to whomever does it or whomever you're with or they are with. Another way is I've heard people talk about they have a ritual. I used to have a long drive and coming home from work, and I would on purpose use that to decompress. I have a cousin who's a physical therapist, and she says that first thing she does, she walks in the door and she goes and she calls it washing her patients off of her. She goes and takes a long shower and feels cleansed and feels refreshed, and that's her ritual. I had another friend who his was much more simple. He was at a place where he had to have a name tag, and it was on a lanyard around his neck. He would get in his car coming home from work. He would take off his lanyard, put it in the cup holder, and he said he would sit for about 30 seconds and breathe so that he was calm and made the transition from workspace to home space, but just a little 30-second decompression stop for him was all that it took. And so we, like the person that you were describing, he and his wife came up with that really good signal, and that's just beautiful. But it involved him looking in the mirror, understanding he had had a bad day and he was not in the best mood, wasn't going to be great company for a minute, and so he would buy her flowers as a signal of this is really something special for you, and I'm trying to take care of you by not exposing you to my mess, and this is my signal that I'm going to need just a minute. Did I answer it, Michelle?
Yeah, I just, it doesn't, after years of marriage, right? I was married for 15 years. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know when your partner is coming home
Right.
and not verbalizing that
Right.
it wasn't a good shift.
Yep.
So,
And and it's okay on
go
the
ahead.
other it's okay on the other side. You'd have to be tactful about it, but it's okay to say things like you seem kind of tense. I was wondering if you'd had a bad day today because you seem a little wound a little tight. And you're not accusing anybody. You'd have to choose your language carefully. But like you say, after 10 or 15 years of marriage, you know what you know what's going to tick them off and what they'll be okay with.
Right.
And that involves again regulating me, making sure that I stay away from things that I know is gonna set my wife off. And I do that on purpose. And I've got those same things. And she's after years has a pretty good idea of what they are and does a pretty good job of staying off of the sore places. And so again, it falls to me and looking in the mirror and seeing how I'm saying things and what I'm doing. And if we're both practicing that, then it's becomes a whole lot easier to communicate.
I agree. One more follow-up question. Everybody's free to jump in. But, what about some of the communication with our children, right? Young children is one thing, but when we start coming home from a really bad shift, and we know that first responder kids have mental health issues themselves, right? Higher rates of anxiety and depression. And um, how do we communicate with our teenagers when we get home from shift and we've had a bad shift, and the last thing we want to do is deal with all of the emotion coming at us from a teenager?
Right.
How do you suggest that kind of communication occur?
Well, first point is you're exactly right. Our kids catch stuff from us, not just COVID and colds and that kind of junk. They catch how to act and how to react and all that. And if we're tightly wound all the time, guess how they're going to be? If we're anxious a lot, guess how they're going to be? If we tend toward the melancholia, depression, guess how they're going to be? And um, so that starts with understanding what I'm bringing into the house. Then once I fully understand what I'm bringing into the house, is there something that I can do about that? Can I take some responsibility for it for myself? It then might tie to having some kind of ritual so that by the time you get home, you're ready for all the teenage angst, or or you may walk in with your kids and say to them very straightforward, I had an awful day, had a terrible day. I'm going to just take a little bit. I'm going to go take a shower. I'm going to go just be quiet for just a little bit, and I'll join y'all in a little bit. And I want to check in with all of you. I'm not ignoring you. I just want to not contaminate you with um, my upset from the day, or I don't want to bring a bunch of upset into the house, and something like that, because kids are generally pretty good about that. Occasionally, if you particularly if you treat them with respect, um, there's a greater potential that they'll treat you back with some respect if you treat them like they're 15 or 16, which means slowly learning how to separate instead of like they're 8 years old. Then ideally they're going to begin to act a little more like 15 or 16 years old. So if you lay that base, and that again falls to me as the parent, if you lay that base of wanting to make sure that you check in with everybody, wanting to understand what's going on with everybody, and you take that responsibility. And we did a thing with our kids. We had regular meetings with them when when we would check in with them. They would come home from school. How was your day? And they would honestly tell us, oh, it was pretty bad. Well, let's come hang out and let's talk about your bad day. And then if the week went pretty smoothly, we would make sure that we sat down like on Sunday night, family meeting, and we would talk about, okay, how was your week? Tell us what's going on. Anything we need to know. Okay, here's what's going on with us. We would share with them as well, and then that kind of became the habit. And buddy, don't ask for it though if you don't want it, because our firstborn, our oldest, was our son. He got his first little girlfriend when he was like, I think he was 15, and they were just thick as thieves. Oh, they were. He was over there all day every day, or she was over here all day every day. And one Sunday night, literally, he said, "I want to talk to y'all for a little while," and I went, "Oh crap." because, you know, he's 15 years old. He's had nothing but he's lived and breathed this little girl now for a month or 2 or 3 months. And he sat down on the hearth. Donna and I, my wife and I were on the couch. He sat down on the hearth and he said to us, well, Megan and I have been spending a whole lot of time together, and I wanted to reassure you that we're not doing anything inappropriate. We are not having sex, nor are we going to have sex. And so on the inside, my brain is going, and but I, you know, being a counselor, I control my. You're supposed to have a poker face if you're a counselor, and so I control my nonverbals, and I didn't, you know, didn't really respond. And he said what he wanted to say, and I said to him, "Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your openness and your frankness with us, and I'm glad that you realize that's a concern, and that you're not ready to be a daddy, and you understand all of that's wonderful news." And so, and that was it. But you know, for a parent to be sitting there talking with your 15, 16-year-old son about sex life, you know, don't ask for it if you don't want it, is all I got to say, because the stuff really works, and they take it to heart, and then and they will really come to you and talk about stuff. And that I was really happy that he was able to do that. And then all of our children, we had 3 children, all of them, they'd tell us everything, anything and everything, and we had to listen to it and had to accept it, because that's exactly what we wanted to promote. But it's a matter of practice, and it's a matter of controlling me, because what daddy in the world would listen to, you know, with kids coming and need to talk to you because Megan and I have been thick as thieves and hot and heavy now for what, and oh my God, is she pregnant? Oh my God, you're not going to tell me that she's pregnant. You know, that's what's come out of a lot of dad's mouth. But if I control myself and uh, give them permission, in fact, solicit from them what's going on in their life, I'll be much better off. And Steve Con, are you raising your hand? I see a hand up there.
Yeah, this is Sandy. I'll talk.
Okay. Yeah, that's right.
So I grew up having family meetings, and I come from, my father was a firefighter and my uncles were firefighters.
Mhm.
And, you know, with working those rotating schedules. So we always had set Sunday family meetings where everybody got to voice it. And so we
Mhm.
did do that with our kids, so that they could raise up any concerns. When our daughter was younger, she had developed anxieties, and um, I needed my alone time too. And so one of the tools that we did was, I would go to my room, and you are not allowed to bother me from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock because we need our alone time.
Mhm.
But she was like, but I'll forget what I want to tell you. So I would put a pad of paper and a pen outside the door. And I said, unless you're bleeding or somebody's dying, don't open the door.
Or the
And
house is
so,
on fire. House on fire. That would be a good
yeah,
one too. Yes.
yeah. But it teaches them restraint, you know, and it teaches them that some things can wait,
And
and
respect.
the boundaries and the respect, you know, from a really young age, and that not everything is an immediacy.
But what it also did was it also taught them the importance of the communications of those, having those talks, those family meetings. So now they're 24 and 28, and they enjoy talking with us.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yep.
and I totally agree with you. Don't ask unless you're prepared to hear the answer.
That's right.
But at the same time, you know, they enjoy the conversations, and they are in tune with what's going on with mom and dad, or what's going on with each other, or their own relationships. And it started very early with them. So
Yeah. That's so good to hear, because you know, I don't want my experience to have been an aberration, but I firmly believe that if other people's practice this, you get the same results, and you've just validated that. And it teaches respect, it teaches boundaries, it teaches all the good stuff that you want them to learn. But once again, it's not good news, because it starts with me regulating mine. You know, me looking at myself, me staying on top of me, and making sure that I'm clear and that I'm doing what I need to be doing, so that I can then teach what I need to teach. So good job. Thank you. What else?
I just wanted to carry on what he was just saying about checking with yourself first. I know that's one of your big points that you brought up earlier. It was a big thing I had to learn just recently. Communication with my wife, we're very tough situation with my daughter being sick, and there was very little time for anything other than doing. So communicating about how we were doing was very low and very much in need. But what I found was I developed a whole bunch of defensiveness on my side that I had to get in check first. So instead of making it or getting defensive, why I think she was doing something or why we're not communicating well, once I started looking at myself, we actually found that we could make more progress with a little bit of time that we had.
You're exactly right. That's exactly right. And I appreciate that comment. My wife and I, our youngest son died after a lengthy illness of a neurological disorder related to Lou Gehrig's, and so we know what it's like to have a kid who's struggling. I had another friend who had a child with who was medically fragile, and he said to me one day, it's just so hard when one, in our case three, when one of the three takes 95%. And what do you do, and how do you deal with that? And you just nailed it on exactly on the head. Of I look at me and I make sure that I'm first in check, because if I'm not, then I'm not able to do the things that I need to do. And this medical situation requires so much of me. I got to be on the ball. I got to be on the stick. I cannot let how I'm feeling ruin my effectiveness in communication, ruin my time I have with her or him, mess all of this up. You're exactly right. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful comment and a wonderful insight.
Thank you.
Okay, well, if nobody else has questions that they want to ask on the recorded side, I'm going to let Mark round off the evening. And if Dustin can hear us, we're grateful to have him and Miss Lynn here this evening, and we'd love to have some closing remarks from him if he's there. And then we will shut down the recording and we can have an off-the-record conversation.
We got a hand raised here, so go ahead.
My apologies. Ed, go for it, Ed.
Yes, so the lady that I'm dating, she has a 15-year-old kid who has admitted having suicidal thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I try to talk to her about is when he comes back from his dad's house, she kind of grills him about what they talk about over there.
Mm-hmm.
So I've talked to him a couple of times, and he's admitted to me that he was feeling stressed and he feels like he can't talk to his mom because she takes a lot of the things that he says out of context and it doesn't help him at all.
Mm-hmm.
So I do open myself up for him to talk to me. He's really shy. I guess you call it introvert. And so I kind of have to pull some information out, but once I get him talking, he talks. But he doesn't like to talk around his mom.
Gotcha. Wouldn't it be so simple if we could wave a magic wand and make somebody do X, Y, Z? That's the horns of the dilemma that you're on, Ed. Is that you can't make anybody do anything. So what you can do is encourage her to understand what he's experiencing without betraying his trust. Because if he's talking to you and telling you, but I can't tell mom this because it would send her off the deep end or blah blah blah, you can't betray his trust, but you could talk to her. And you do that by saying things like, I'm really concerned because, I don't call his name, I'll just use mine. I'm really concerned because David seems to be a little withdrawn. I know he's kind of introverted anyway, and I'm really conscious of not wanting to put any pressure on him, any undue additional pressure. What do you think about that? Because if you can help her buy into the idea that you don't need to put unnecessary additional pressure on him, then perhaps she'll start easing up or backing off a little bit. Another thing that you can do, it sounds like that you're already doing, is take him under your wing, because males need strong males. I know, as hard-headed as I am, I tell everybody, my daddy was rough on me. I say that he missed his calling. He should have been a drill instructor in the Marine Corps. He was not, but that's kind of how he reared us, and that's kind of how he treated us. But I'm so hard-headed and strong-willed that had I not had that kind of structure, I don't know what would have happened to me, honestly. And so with him, he sounds more introverted, more gentle of spirit. I don't want to label anybody anything, but somebody who's gentle of spirits needs somebody to take, to take them under their wing. And they, regardless, in either direction, males need strong males. And so you can be strong by showing him how to be um, uh, open and vulnerable and tender, because that takes a special kind of strength. And you can show him how to be strong by standing up and being responsible and doing the things that he needs to do. But you do either one of those in all those directions by taking him under your wing, and just doing stuff with him, not going to him and talking about his feelings, but if he likes to go out in the yard and throw the ball, go out in the yard and throw the ball. If he likes to play video games, join in playing video games with him. If he likes to go work out with him. If he likes to go to a ball game, go to a ball game. Go to him on, after this mess is over, and says, a new movie coming out, I really wanted to see. Come with me. I don't want to go by. Come with me, and go to the movies together. Do stuff that's not about getting to know you or pushing this artificial anything, because I don't know how he feels about you, but I was a stepchild, and I always resented my step parent, and lots of stepchildren do. And so it's because they're the adult in the room, it's incumbent on the step parent to go and extend and make sure that the child is included, and that they develop a special relationship with that child, and things are in line, and you're teaching the child the things that you need to teach them. So you can do those subtle things, you can do the overt things, and talk with mom about your concerns, not about how she's acting, but you're concerned about how David is feeling. And had she noticed that? What does she think about that? What do you think we ought to do? Those kind of things, and approach it from that way. That's the best thing that I can think of, since you can't wave that magic wand and make anybody do anything. See if you can kind of win her over to your way of thinking, because he'll talk to you, and therefore you're headed in the right direction. And Mama's got some struggles on her hands. Bad news, but just the truth. Did that get it for you?
Yes,
Did it
sir.
help any?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Who else? Anybody got anything else?
That's okay. If not, Dustin sat down. He not only sat down, he put on a dress shirt. So we are going to ask Mark to give just a quick thank you. And Dustin, we're grateful to have you join us. If he could give us some quick closing remarks as our chaplain, we would be very welcome to receive them. And then we will shut off the record on Mark's end, and we can have a very open conversation in, the privacy of confidentiality.
All right, Dr. Lane, thanks again for your time. The more and more I do this, we've got some amazing mental health providers and clinicians that join us. And the more we blur the lines between first responders and clinicians, we see how similar we are. And that's doing phenomenal things. And we really appreciate your time and your insight. Absolutely phenomenal presentation tonight.
So thank you.
You're welcome. I really enjoyed it. I like coming having a conversation. I hate standing talking at people, and I really appreciate y'all asking questions and chiming in.
As firefighters, we appreciate not being talked at, because typically that is what happens. So thank you for making the time for us this evening. We are hoping to welcome you back again in the coming months, and having more conversation with you and your beautiful beard. And with that, we will ask Dustin, please, to give us some closing remarks. Thank you again, David. We really appreciate the time and attention that you've given our fire families.
You are most welcome. I'm delighted to try to be of service.
Everybody hear me okay? Wow, way to put somebody on the spot. It was amazing. Just a few brief moments ago, working in the shop with my far better, more beautiful, intelligent half, fully expecting to remain quiet and in the background there. But I did indeed throw on a collared shirt when I'm used to being in a suit and tie. David, thank you so much for taking the opportunity not only to offer life experiences, which so many people put such significant value into tangible physical things, and often discount the value of life experiences, lesson learned. More often than not, the value is not placed in don't do this methodology mistakes until we make them ourselves. That's what's so powerful about this family and caregiver connection, to have individuals, not only clinical licensed mental health professionals, which are far more professional than most firefighters are, but somebody who has been through and become the iron in the fire, tempered by life's experiences, such as yourself. We appreciate that opportunity to put the family, the favorite F word next to feelings, back into the most important attribute and asset that we have, and that's those that are around us. This evening, I'd be remiss if I didn't share from one of the greatest works that I really put a high degree of value and lesson and virtue, not only into societal norms and way that we can grow, but in the value and the power of family. Written in the Republic in Book 5 from Plato, it says, "Shall they be a family in name only, or shall they be in all their actions true to the name?" This is a powerful tool. Far often than not, we put lip service in and not enough value into what family truly is. Don't just say we're a family, show in action we're a family. Many of you saw in the background a very busy, fuzzy-headed, beautiful woman that I admire. We didn't say that we're family and just put our arms around each other. We buckle down when times are tough and when we need to put in the work. That is the true measure of what family is about. Lending an ear in difficult times and listening in awkward conversations, even when a son or a daughter is talking to you about their sexual activity or in a celebratory fashion, the lack thereof. But being present is absolutely a powerful, powerful tool. Reflect not on the outward, but what's on the inward. It was said, kind of butchered as such, in the King James Bible, and said, "But let it be hidden in the man of heart, and what in which is not corruptible, even the ornament of the meek and quiet spirit, but is in the sight of God at great price." Let me interpret that for the rest of us. I'm a little bit lower and slower. I'm a knuckle dragger. I'm a hose dragger. Not that bright. Put the water on the wet stuff. So let's use the New Living Translation to make it a little more palatable for the rest of us. You should clothe yourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of gentle and quiet spirit, which truly is so precious to God. So look inwardly, not outwardly, not what you wear and don yourselves with and distract away, but find out what's important inside of your heart, because that's truly the most beautiful. Today, a lesson in power that I found. I was ready to go and buckle down and be buried in work for another wonderful 18 to 20-hour day, which is what all firefighters should do before they go do a 24-hour shift at one of the busiest houses in the county, because we know better, but we do it anyways. My beautiful wife came in and said, "Stop. I want you to go ahead and take a couple hours. Get on your motorcycle, go for a ride." That's the definition of family. Recognizing not just the strength, but the weaknesses and when we need time for hope and healing. And that's what this is about. So today, as my beautiful wife is over there with her amazing orchid collection that made it indoors because it's far too cold outdoors, making tea, armoring up for the long haul. The goal is not just saying, let's make it through a day. Let's aim for the future. Let's aim for the 75 and 80-year anniversaries. Let's not miss the in-between. Let's protect each other. Let's cloak each other with love and compassion. Be willing to listen and be willing to hear when it's something that's uncomfortable. What you may find is through your journey in marriage and cloaking yourself, not on outward armor, but opening your heart and being vulnerable, you might find that that partner, that spouse, that person that you promised your life to and with, maybe actually wanting the same life adventures that you are, and hot damn it if you just forgot to speak, and more importantly, give a safe place to listen. So with that in mind, David, I thank you for sharing and also being vulnerable. You didn't just raise 3 kids, you raised a family, and you've also learned to love in loss and thrive in spite of it. That's an amazing thing. Even more amazing than that beard on your face is that you earned every damn gray hair and you wear it proudly. For everybody here in the Family Caregiver Connection, take a moment. Most of the time we give this brief mezzanine level. Don't take things for granted. Well, don't. Lynn, thank you for telling me this evening that we appreciate each other. And thank you for making me stop today and get on the motorcycle and ride. Thank you for letting me be seen. I love you for who you are and appreciate it. Now, for those of you, she's making a beautiful face over there right now and laughing, which that's a laugh that regardless, whether we run 20 or 25 calls on average for our truck, whether my hands are sore and tired trying to make differences in just one person's life, I absolutely want to exercise gratitude. David, thank you for the lessons this evening. Everybody that joined in the Caregiver Connection, thank you for taking time to empower and better yourself. Now, when this is done and the cameras go off and you share your questions and thoughts, take off your armor, take off your cloak, show the silent resolve that's within and share it with your partner, because dang it, that's the greatest gift that money can't buy, that's more valued than anything we will ever find. It's called love. So with that in mind, I love this beautiful lady over here to my right, your left, who's protecting her orchids. I love each and every one of you with all of my heart, and I can say it with confidence because today you chose to show up. So when the sun rises tomorrow, and it surely will, I look forward to you showing up and the people and family in your lives tomorrow. Define family, be it. Don't just talk about it. Thank you, be healthy, be well, have a wonderful night, and I will see each of you in the next Caregiver Connection as it comes, and I will be far better dressed, but peaceful of heart. Thank you.